Coming up on This Week in Radio Tech, John Bisset is with us. You know, the guy who writes that Workbench column? And we're going to be talking about something that we're calling Busta Crete. Plus lots of other great ideas to maintain your transmitter sites and your studios, plus tips of the week. It's all coming up next on TWiRT. This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you by Broadcasters General Store with outstanding service, savings, and support. Online at bgs.cc. By Broadcast Bionics with the Bionics Studio, including talk show control, social media, and visual radio. Broadcast Bionics brings exceptional audience engagement to radio and TV. By Angry Audio. Audio problems disappear when you get angry at angryaudio.com. And by Max Connect Wireless, prioritized high-speed internet service designed for transmitter sites and remote broadcasts. Hey, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech, the show where we talk about everything from the microphone, like this one, to the light bulb at the top of the tower. And, you know, I'm going to try this once. Okay, I'm going to try this once. Sorry for the bad camera compensation, but we're going to give this a try. Camera should compensate. There we go. There's the towers. Yeah. I'm at this tower site in Nashville, in Forest Hills. The site has been here since, I think, the 1950s. A couple of very enterprising, entrepreneurial engineers said, hey, we're going to buy that hill, and we're going to build a tower there, and we're going to charge all kinds of money to put people on it. Hey, I'm Kirk Harnack. Welcome into This Week in Radio Tech, and it's our 544th episode. This one recorded May the 13th. Of 2021. John Bisset, the beloved John Bisset. Bisset is our guest today. We've got some cool things to talk about. And John, first of all, welcome in, John. Glad you're here. Glad you could make it to the show.
Hey, Kirk. Thank you very much. It's great to be here. And boy, I'm envious of you out there at that tower site. That's great.
It's a beautiful day, puffy clouds going by. To keep I'm just using a webcam, so to keep the lighting compensation okay, I'm just going to have to kind of keep it away from the towers and turn it a bit here so that I've got some green behind me. But not far from me are several buildings. In fact, well, I'll tell you what, I'll get in the history of the site a little bit later because I may be wrong about a few things, but I'll give a couple of highlights that I know about. Welcome into our show. And today we're talking to John Bisset. I say the beloved John Bisset. Everybody knows who John is. John writes a column called Workbench in the Radio World magazine. John, how long have you been writing Workbench?
We are in our 31st year. It's been a long time. That's a lot of tips, isn't it?
Yeah, you could fill a book with that, couldn't you?
We're talking about that. In fact, Radio World's going to do an ebook coming up on best practices for transmitter sites. It's going to be published, I believe, in about 2 weeks. Everyone who subscribes to Radio World can receive that publication. They'll get it, but it's also available on the Radio World website. So be watching for that. It should be a lot of fun. I will be joining a handful of other writers who will be writing about best practices at transmitter sites.
You're going to have a few tips for transmitter sites on today's show, and I decided to title this show like Busta Rhymes, but Busta Crete, because we're going to talk about busting up concrete using an chemical process, and so you'll have that later on. I don't want to spoil that, and I'll keep our powder dry. I want to say, hey, of course, we get on the air and we get a little bit of packet loss, but I am broadcasting today using a Max Connect wireless device, and of course, through all the testing, it's been fantastic. I got great speeds, 28 megs down. I got about 18 megs up, and although I am right under the cell tower, so maybe we're not quite in the beam of the cell signal. So that's we're out here broadcasting live on location using Max Connect wireless. The thing about Max Connect is it's not going to be the fastest speed typically, but it's going to be guaranteed bandwidth. It's going to be good bandwidth and low packet loss, and you get a fixed IP address. We'll hear more about that later on. So, John, we're going to talk about concrete, but we got some other topics to talk about too coming up in the show. You mentioned best practices at tower sites for maintenance. And that's kind of important because now more and more tower sites are getting fewer and fewer visits. On the one hand, equipment tends to be pretty reliable these days. On the other hand, not everything has gone through the transformation that, say, new transmitters have. There are still air handling systems and bugs still, don't know to stay out of a transmitter site, and other vermin. So we'll talk about that. We're going to have some ideas about how to best use cell phones and how to talk to your tower climbers and contract engineers about cell phones. And I've got to have something about Cidr notation, and not the kind of cider that you drink. So all that's coming up. John, why don't we just go ahead and get under sponsor message coming up in a few minutes, but let's kind of get underway. What would you like to start with on today's show?
Well, you're outside right now, Kirk. So let's look at something outside, and that's the generator. If you've got a generator there, you mentioned bugs, you mentioned animals and things like that. You want to keep those out of your generator, and since you're not there on a regular basis, using that half-inch spaced hardware cloth, I think they call it, or heavy-duty screen. And putting that on all of the inputs to the air inputs and any other gaps that may be around the generator would be a real good idea. It doesn't take very long to do. It will keep the insides nice and clean and prevent the problem with having mice or other rodents getting inside there and chewing wires, and when you need the generator, finding out that it's not going to work.
It's worthwhile to note that rodents, especially mice, can get through the smallest of holes. And you said half-inch screen. This is it steel typically?
Yes, that's correct. It's half-inch screen, and if you go any finer than that, the problem that you have is if there is pollen in the area or leaves or something like that. When the generator turns on with its regular exercising, it may suck that sort of thing in up against the screen and then restrict the airflow. The half-inch is small enough to keep larger animals out, but still give you proper airflow coming into the system.
Ah, okay. Now, if you have half-inch screen, how would you attach it to various ports? Let's say you've got some holes where some, maybe some cable went in and out, or you've got a large area where air comes to get to the radiator of a generator. How is this best attached to the frame or the cover of the generator?
Good question, Kirk. What you end up doing is buy yourself some sheet metal tapping screws and some washers. The washers, if they're 1 inch like fender washers, the screw will go through the fender washer. The washer is big enough around to keep the screen in place. You put those maybe every 10, 12 inches apart to hold the screen in place. And because these aren't real long screws, but they tap into the metal, they'll secure the screen. In other places where you have like cable penetrations and things like that, the screening may not be a possibility. What you end up doing there is using a combination of expanding foam and stainless steel wool. You can find that at a hardware store or at a kitchen supply place. Even the big box stores have this. The reason that you do this in combination with the foam, the animals will chew right through the foam, but when they hit that steel wool, stainless steel wool or copper wool, it stops them dead. So they're not going to go any further. So it kind of gives you double protection.
That's a good point about stainless steel wool as opposed to regular steel wool, because regular steel wool will rust. It'll rust right out, and then it won't do any good at all. But you mentioned stainless steel wool, and then copper wool. Where do you find that?
Same thing. You find sometimes at a kitchen supply store, hardware stores have it, and it's just copper that has been all ground up and in like a sort of like a skein of yarn for that you would be working with, and you just pull off the piece that you need and shove it in the hole, and then seal it up with the compound. What's nice though is if you run a piece of string around the wool before you shove it down in there. What works out real well is if you ever have to remove it, the string comes out, the foam goes around it, and then what you can end up doing is going around the foam with a knife and then just pull the whole plug out. So you're not if otherwise you're fishing around inside there trying to get it all out, and it works out real well if you've got the string attached.
I've been to transmitter sites. I've been charged with trying to repair transmitters that had a fair amount of cable harness damage inside due to mice or rats or some other kind of vermin eating that up. I wonder if the wire manufacturers ever thought about coating the wire with something that tastes bad to rodents. What do you think about that?
That's really a good idea. We should ask that and see whether or not that would work. Because, that's the worst thing. And where I see it a lot, Kirk, was in the conduit going back into the radio station from a satellite dish. The cable just goes down in that conduit, and nobody thinks about the end of it being plugged. And either a mouse gets in there or water gets in there and freezes, and then damages the cable. And when that thing happens, it's always, halfway through the conduit. So it's not an easy fix.
That's a good point. I never thought about my my conduit for the satellite dish. That's a great point. Because I usually just leave that open, but that's a great place for a mouse to jump into and find him something to eat, as in cable jack.
Yeah, down in Mississippi, I don't know that you'd have so much of a problem with the ice, the rain falling in there and then turning into ice. But in other regions where it does get really cold, that can be a real problem. And if you want to have some fun, go onto YouTube and look at what ice can do when they put a bottle of water in a freezer and freeze it. I mean, it cracks the bottle. It'll crack whatever's inside. Your insulation is gone. So it's a pretty nasty situation. So the whole idea is to stop that, prevent it before it even starts.
Actually, you mentioned that it's not a big problem in Mississippi, but what we have in the southern part of the U.S. is we don't think about stuff freezing, and then once in a while it does. So we haven't taken precautions about it because, hey, we're in the South here. We're south of the Mason-Dixon line. It doesn't freeze that much down here. Well, yes, it can. You get one freeze, and you haven't thought about moisture daily, building up a little bit of moisture every day, and you end up with a conduit that actually does have water in it. And for, your cable goes through that just fine. It's not usually a big problem until it freezes. And then it crimps, it squeezes the cable, it breaks the plastic, the PVC conduit or metal, if you've used that. So, the problem is we don't think about it in the South.
Sure.
Yeah. Wow. And the other thing that I think you have to walk around the transmitter building and see where all the little points of ingress could be. Right? So you've drilled holes, maybe an electrician has drilled a hole through the concrete, run a pipe through there, but maybe not sealed it up well enough. And again, you'd be surprised at how small an opening that a motivated little mouse can get through, because that motivated little mouse doesn't want to freeze outside. He wants to come inside. And so,
absolutely right. And Kirk, that's a nice nighttime thing to do is if you come to the site at night, turn on all the lights inside and then take your walk on the outside and look to see if any light is escaping. And that's another place is at the AM ATUs. You'd have no idea where light can come out of either cracks in where the door does not seal properly, or as you say, a hole that was drilled that you forgot about. So those nighttime visits are always very good for spotting things like that.
Good points all the way around. And this is something that it's so basic that we so often forget about it. But you're right. We need to just take a couple hours, and night's a great idea. Turn all the lights inside, have no lights outside, and walk around and look and look and look and pretend you're a mouse if you need to. Just where you're going to come in, and maybe where they put, maybe where they cut a hole for the air duct to go in or out. Maybe you've got, a forced air system bringing air inside, or an air conditioner that's actually outside. Well, there could be all kinds of room around that where it comes in. So, steel wool, the caulk. You've recommended something I believe called Mouse Magic. And I was at a transmitter site a couple weeks ago. My friend Larry Fuss bought a big thing of, I think it was called Rat Magic. It looked like the same logo, same company. Have you heard of Rat Magic?
No, I haven't. It's probably just a bigger pouch. But that stuff is great. It makes your transmitter site smell real good. It does a really good job. Keeps the mice out. They hate the smell. It's a peppermint smell, and for some reason they can't stand that smell. And Kirk, something else since we're talking about the outside. It doesn't take a lot of time to do this, but if you end up mowing around the building and then lay down that black plastic or the landscape fabric that would prevent weeds from growing, and then cover that with crushed stone. Mice, snakes, animals like that do not like to be out in the open. And when you've got brush that's growing nearby the building, it gives them a place to sort of sit there and, okay, I'm going to work on getting in. I'll find a way in. But if they have to travel through 3 feet of crushed stone and be out in the open where a hawk could get them or something like that.
Exactly.
So, it's a good way of making sure that you're not putting the vacancy sign out in front of your transmitter building for all the animals to try to find a way in.
That's a great point. I used to use, and I haven't for years, but I used to use a product called Pramitol around the transmitter building. I'm told that stuff is pretty strong or poisonous. It sterilizes the ground so that nothing will grow in it. And I found it to be pretty effective. Farmers use it along fence rows and around buildings. And I've used it around buildings to make a 1 or 2 foot wide path that was just nothing but dirt. And it stayed that way for 2 or 3 years. Called Pramitol. I used to buy it at a farm supply store. Again, I don't know if it's, just what kind of rules it falls under. I probably distributed it with a bare hand, which was probably a very bad idea. Later on, I did use a glove to just distribute it around. You should use a machine or something. Anyway, Pramitol was good, but I like the crushed stone idea. And you're right. I'm here at this transmitter site, and I've seen a hawk flying around. Yeah, I know what he's looking for. Little rodents.
There you go. And Kirk, with that in mind, something to think about before you put things down on the ground like that is to find out through either the manufacturer or people that have used it, whether it will have any effect on the ground radials if it's an AM array. Because, some chemicals can eat up your ground radials, and it's the last thing that you want to do. Is have those go south because of something that you put on to fix one problem and you've caused another.
Good point. Very good point. Hey, it's This Week in Radio Tech, episode number 544. I'm Kirk Harnack, live on location. I don't know the name of this hill. I guess it should have a name, but I'm in the Forest Hills area of Nashville, just overlooking Brentwood, Tennessee to this side, and Nashville is that way. A lot of planes come over here, apparently on approach to the Nashville airport. When they're landing toward the north, they swing right around here. And there are no less than 5 towers right here on this site, and there's another FM tower actually back down this road a ways that a few, I think there's an LP FM on that, maybe a full power. But I believe some of the iHeart stations are out here in town. A couple of, I know Way FM is out here, and there's at least 2 TV stations. I think there are just 2 TV stations here, the public TV station and the ABC affiliate, WKRN. And it's a beautiful site. It's been here since the 50s. Tell you what, I'll show you a couple buildings here later on. Let's take a quick break. John, we've got a lot more things to talk about, including the title of the show, Busta Crete. What? That's going to be coming up in a minute. Our show is brought to you in part by our friends at Broadcast Bionics, and we'll be right back.
X-Screen 2, the simply amazing new way to control, screen and log calls using your Telos HX6, IQ6 or VX Talk Show systems, helping you to get the best calls to air quickly and easily. X-Screen 2 is a powerful touchscreen interface that connects alongside your VSET 6 or VSET 12 handsets and even enables you to screen directly on your PC using a USB headset or sound card. X-Screen 2 clearly displays the status of lines and hybrids, quickly captures caller details for screening and automatically stores a log of calls and easily manages station and show directories of important numbers. There's also a scheduling clock and chat window for instant messaging and visual talkback to other X-Screen workstations on the system. As soon as a line rings, the caller's name is displayed, if they've rung before, and we can look up their location. X-Screen also usefully shows how many times they've called before and when they last called. You can add alerts to identify nuisance or persistent callers before you've even answered the call. To route a call to the VSET or headset, simply click on the handset symbol, exactly as you would use the button on the VSET. Using the other icon on the line, we can hold the call or route the call to a hybrid. Selecting an alternative device will change the icon key so you'll always know the destination of the call. The tabs on the right-hand side provide more information and control the selected caller. We can add this caller to a caller directory or create a manual entry for someone we call regularly. Calling someone is as simple as just clicking dial on their entry. A free version of Xscreen is included with your HX6, IQ6 and VX TalkShow system. The full version of the software enables the caller database, directories and alerts and other cloud-based features. All Telos customers can try the full version for 3 months by downloading the free trial. More information is available by contacting Broadcast Bionics or your local dealer.
Broadcast Bionics for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. Hey, I turned the camera around and adjusted the aperture as best I could. Hey, it's just a webcam to show you a little bit of this site where I'm at. John Bisset is my guest. John, you still there?
I certainly am.
Good. Let me give you a quick tour here. The original tower here, I'm told, was that self-supporting tower, the triangular one that's self-supporting there, and that originally held a television broadcasting antenna. I don't know how big it was, but that's what I'm told was the original tower here. And then the white building you can barely see on the right-hand side of the screen, that was actually a television studio building. Even though we're up on top of a hill, I'm not saying a rural area, but we're not surrounded by houses right here. We are on a hill, and the houses are mostly around the edges of the hill. But that building, the white building, they actually did TV productions in there, including, if I'm correct, I think I was told that they actually did some wrestling in that building. I believe they did news and other productions. You can see the generators. There are at least 2 of them in sight right here. The cat with the gold yellow paint there, and then the green one as well. To your left hand side, there are 2 towers, not 1 but 2, and they are probably about 60, 70 feet from each other, not too far away. And they are on the order of, I think they're right at 1,000, 1,100 feet tall. One of them is taller than the other. And they do have some ENG receive antennas on them. And they have television transmitting antennas and some FM antennas as well, and some backup FM antennas. You can't see it in this shot, but on the other side, behind the camera, there are 2 cell towers. And we are, I assume, talking through one of those cell towers right now. I want to say thanks also to my friend Mike Flood and his friend Jim Todd and Mike. Thank you for giving a little okay for us to come out to the site here and talk to the folks from out here. Hey, let me real quick check in with Suncast. Are things any better, or do I need to reconnect? Kind of okay, Suncast? Fine for now. Okay, good. All righty. Well, we're talking to John Bisset, the beloved John Bisset of the Workbench column that comes out in Radio World, and he's got more great ideas. John, do you want to go ahead? Oh, John, I'm not sure if I told you, we've got a little short video, not to listen to, but to talk over. So if you want to introduce this concrete idea, and when we might want to use it, then at some appropriate time, Suncast can play a little video that shows it being used. What are we talking about?
Very good. Sure. Well, I loved your name, Busta Crete. I was saying that's a great air name, isn't it?
Could be.
So anyway, I had a customer send this to me, and what it is a compound that you drill holes in concrete and you pour this stuff, you mix it, pour this stuff into the holes, and it actually expands and busts the concrete. It doesn't matter with rebar.
Let's roll the video here. There we go.
There we go. Yeah, now you can see he's gone ahead and drilled these holes. They provide you with a bit that's it's about a 1-inch diameter bit, and in fact, if you go on Amazon, they have the entire kit together. This is really wild. This is just a couple of hours afterwards. You can see it's already starting to split, and there is rebar in here, and that's a good 2-foot high piece of concrete. You were asking earlier, Kirk, if you wanted to do something with like a tower pier or something like that. Not that you could get the holes deep enough to go all the way down. You'd probably have to do it several times, so in several layers. But
Yeah.
the idea is, as you see, this is it's starting to crack. A couple of hours later, this is 6 hours now.
Uh-huh.
And what I
And there's
found,
rebar in this.
yes,
There is rebar in
there's
there. So this,
rebar. And what I found really interesting is you can see that it comes up a little bit from the top, but it's actually expanding laterally, not going vertically up and down. And here we go. The next day, and you'll see the rebar. Look at that.
wow.
Isn't
All
that
right.
something? Now, the alternative would be to stand there with a jackhammer and jiggle your insides apart. And what the gentleman's doing here now is just cutting the pieces of the rebar with
Oh, yeah.
a electric hacksaw. But those are one big, heavy piece of concrete, each one of those. So it's really, really
This
something.
this makes it so really. I mean, one industrious fellow could take care of a big piece of concrete like this. You could bust up a driveway or a pier or maybe a pad that you poured for an air conditioner or a genset if you need for that to be somewhere else. Yes, you could bust up a tower pier this way.
Or a satellite satellite pad.
Oh yeah,
You know, if you
yeah.
had to move a dish or you were no longer using a dish, you wanted to get rid of it. So, anyways, pretty amazing, isn't it?
Good point. Good. Yeah, yeah. So that's called Dexpan. That particular
Yes.
product.
And you can search for it on Amazon. In fact, the Amazon site has the drill bits, the drill, everything that you need. They probably could sell you the bucket too. Although I believe it comes in the Dexpan. That's how the Dexpan comes. But you just mix water with it and stir it all up, and then just start pouring it in the holes that you've drilled, and away you go.
Wow.
That's the end of the concrete.
Wow. Hey, you may never need this product, but if you do need to bust up some concrete, there you go. That's wow. Could be a
Well,
good
you
way
know,
to do
Kirk,
it.
as engineers, we're like always being tasked to do things that, you know, it's not a part of our job description. You know, you find a way to do it. So here, you may never ever need it, but it's tucked away in the back of your head. You know, someday it may come in handy.
Good deal. All right. Let's. You mentioned that you've got some advice coming out in an ebook from Radio World about transmitter site best practices, and this may take we may cross our sponsor message with this. I get to a transmitter site, John, and I see, there's a problem, and there's a problem. This needs to be done, and then I usually I went there to do some things anyway, change a filter or change an IP address or make sure that something or other was working right or fix a bad audio connection, whatever, but I probably should have a checklist of things that I really should check when I'm there. Talk to me about best practices for transmitters, not only the things you should do, but how do you remember the things that you should do?
Well, that's the key. And in this article that I'm putting together for the ebook, Kirk, it's kind of a step-by-step process of here are some things to keep in mind even as you're driving to the transmitter site. When you get to the site, some things to do before you go inside. And then once you get inside, some things to do. It'll be a good refresher for those of us who have been doing this a long time, but also for the newer engineers and some that maybe have never been to a transmitter site and really don't know what to touch or what to do, what not to do, that sort of thing.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, do you have a list that you'd like to share with us of some of the top things that you at least need to cover these? And probably, since every transmitter site's different, you're going to want to add your own as you think about it. And this could be, by the way, a piece of software. This could be a list. I like Google Keep because I can actually make a list of things to check off in Google Keep. But maybe you got some other ideas on what an engineer can do to easily make sure I covered all the bases and had an opportunity to add more bases if needed.
There you go. Sure, Kirk. And I don't want to give away the article, but so everyone's going to have to contact Radio World and get a copy of the ebook. But it's a couple of things to keep in mind is that people need to know where the site is, having good, clear directions back at the station so that if a manager or an owner or somebody who's never been to the transmitter site has to go there in an emergency, they have a way of finding it. That's item number one. Looking for construction around the site. There's so many cellular phone antennas, towers that are going up these days. If you've got a directional array, know that those constructed towers could cause a problem and make it impossible for you to keep your directional array in check. So if you see construction of that sort, or even with buildings that are around the site, it's something for you to investigate and keep an eye on. Looking at things inside the building itself, we talked about the mouse magic. Filters is a real good idea. You were talking about going in and changing transmitter filters. If you're not using the high efficiency pleated filters, those are really a great thing to do, because they will keep your equipment clean. And since you're not going to the transmitter site once a week like we used to, you're keeping the site clean, so you're not going to have all kinds of dirt inside the equipment. And using these filters both as intake filters, air conditioning filters, as well as transmitter filters, a really good idea to do that.
Yeah, probably most engineers know this already, but one of the things that the internet has brought us, and being able to buy things in bulk has brought us, is that once you find a brand or a quality of air filter that you like, and certainly you get the right size, because some air handling systems take the 2-inch thick filters, the pleated filters are the 1-inch thick. Get the right size. Order these in bulk, and they can cost a lot less when you order them in bulk. I buy them in bulk for my house, and I've got 2 different air handling systems in my house, so I have to buy 2 different boxes of them, and the boxes will last me a year or more. But they're always there. And when I get down to one left, well, I just where did I order this from? Order some more. We'll keep these at the transmitter site. And by the way, you may want to keep them off the floor. If your floor is prone to get a little damp or wet, you want to keep the filters, out of that, keep up high on a shelf, and order them in bulk. So there's always a filter there when you go to the transmitter site. Trash bags. Oh my goodness. I forget, but my friend Larry Fuss, we go to transmitter sites together. He brings the trash bags. And there's always stuff to throw out. And you don't want to leave food there. Obviously, that brings rodents in, right? You don't want to leave food.
You're not kidding. Yeah, and that is for sure. I mean, anything edible, they will get into it. They'll find it, and you want to make sure that's just kind of like there's no eating in the studio, there's no eating in the transmitter building, or at least if there is, you take the wrappers, you take everything with you. You don't want to leave anything around that's going to be an invitation for the rodents, because when they're hungry, they'll find a way in. And even if that means chewing through the insulation or chewing through the rubber gasket at the bottom of the door, it's when you're starving, I guess you'll do almost anything for food. So something to be concerned about. Kirk, I don't know if we have a picture of the 2 pleated air filters we can show.
Oh, we do. We got some pictures. I forgot all about them. I bet Suncast probably has these about ready to go. I shared a link with him, I believe.
Okay.
I hope he has. Maybe he can put a word in. Oh, here we go. Yeah, talk about these.
Yeah, that's not a charcoal filter on the right. That is a dirty air filter.
Oh, yuck. Oh, bluck.
Man, now can you imagine all that stuff being inside your building or inside your transmitter or inside your exciter, wherever you might have a fan? So it's really, really important that you change these on a regular basis. And something to keep in mind, you see those white strips back and forth that keep the filter in place. I write with a Sharpie, a Tello Sharpie, the date that I put the things in. And that way I know, okay, it was been in for 30 days. If it is black like this, then I'm going to have to change it more often. But, it just gives you an idea. So as you were saying, budgeting the number of filters you're going to need in a year and buying them in bulk. Well, if your site is real dirty and you've got to change these things every 30 days like this, you're going to want to buy a lot more filters than if you have to do it every 6 months. So, it's, and you're right, the air filters are an amazing discount if you start buying them in quantity.
Something, I do write the date on the air filter that I changed it at home and at transmitter sites. The other thing I write a date on, batteries. So not too many products require batteries, but remember, BE AM transmitters, and I don't know about the FMs,
Yes,
maybe
sir.
they do too, but BE transmitters have a 9-volt battery inside there, and I always, with a Sharpie, I write the date that I put that battery in there, so I'll know, because you don't want that battery to die on you. You won't have a good time.
Absolutely, Kirk. And you bring up a good point. At the first of the year, that's a great time to do it because hopefully there's not a lot going on. But you want to go through, change all of the batteries in your smoke detectors, the fire detectors if you've got those, all of the equipment that has batteries, and make sure that you note that because yes, the BE, both the FM and the AM transmitters had those 9-volt batteries. And let me tell you about, I imagine it might be for the AMs as well, but on the FMs, the battery is a keep alive for the memory. So if there's a power failure, it remembers the setting of the transmitter power output. Well, if that battery dies and the power goes out, all those settings go away. You go to turn the transmitter on, nothing happens. I spent about a half hour trying to trace the thing, figure out what it was. It turned out the battery was dead. All of the settings that I had programmed in there were gone. And the solution was to press the raise power button. I mean, I felt so foolish afterwards that it was something that simple because, we always think it's going to be a big deal. The transmitter's not coming up. You got plate voltage, but no power output. What's going on here? But anyway, it was that simple. And it's a good example of why you want to make sure these batteries are there. They're there to help you, but if they're dead, they're not going to help you.
They're not going to help you at all. Hey, John, coming up, we've got more of the pictures that you provided. I'm sorry I forgot about those, so we'll get more of those on shortly. And also, we're going to talk about some ways that you can use photographs to your extreme advantage and have them kind of take care of themselves. I got some great advice for that. That's from me. Also, in the show, we're going to talk for a minute about something called Cidr Notation. And that has nothing to do with something you drink. So we'll have that. John has some more things as well coming up. Our show's brought to you in part by my friend Hank Landsberg at Henry Engineering. This is the Henry Superlight. Remember, we all know the Henry Super Relay. We know and love the Super Relay. But you know what? Our lights, our power systems are a little bit less power hungry these days than they used to be. So this is the Henry Superlight that Suncast is showing on the screen here. What is it? Well, it's a logic and control interface for controlling low voltage studio tally lights. It can directly power 12-volt DC LED tally lights that draw up to half an amp. Now, Superlight includes a flasher circuit, as you might expect if you know about the Henry Super Relay. It also has a double pole, double throw relay output that can be used for any low voltage switching, speaker muting, or other utility use. Remember how we used to use these relays to turn on the capstan motor on the cassette deck so we could do our telescope, our own air check? Well, there's other things you can do with a Henry Superlight because we're not using cassette decks anymore. Now, that LED output can supply 12 volts up to 500 milliamps, but it can sink up to 2 amps if you use it with an external power source. The LED output can be set to flash, on for use on the air warning lights, and you control them all with you plug in Euroblock connectors. These are really convenient to use. It's quick to hook up, but look, there's also a couple of RJ45 connectors that are on the unit. Those are so you can daisy chain from one to another. You can use it with various things like a Telos, like an Axia GPIO node or a WheatNet blade. You can daisy chain these to control the number of them and really simplify your wiring. So check this thing out. It's the Henry Superlight. When you call Broadcast General Store to ask for one, that's how you should say it. You should say Superlight. Call Broadcasters General Store at 352-622-7700. Might want to memorize that. Or look them up on the web at bgs.cc. bgs.cc. Broadcaster General Store, they carry the whole line of Henry Engineering equipment, and they'll solve all kinds of problems for you, including your tally lights. By the way, at one of my stations, we just changed the old-fashioned tally lights to some LED replacements, and they are terrific. In fact, now I can replace the Super Relay with a Super Light in that very studio, or any new studios that I built there. Thanks a lot, Henry Engineering and Broadcasters General Store, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. John, do you know anything about BGS? Do you know these guys?
They're good folks, aren't they? They are
They
our
are.
exclusive Axia dealers, so we're happy to have them represent Axia.
Good deal. So, John, I'm going to take just a moment and talk about something that we talked about, and that is an idea for photos. Now, we know that photographs with your, we used to always ask photographers back before we had cell phones. We would say, "What's the best camera to have? What camera should I carry with me? Should I carry a Yashica 35 millimeter, or maybe a Canon, or what should I have, or a Nikon?" Sony came out with some cameras, and then we had digital cameras come out. Fuji came out with some, and then we started having cell phones. And the answer that I consistently heard from professional photographers is the best camera that you should take with you at all times is the one you have with you. In other words, it doesn't really matter. It's the one you have with you. If the point is, use it. And so we're more and more of us engineers are getting used to using cameras to help us solve little problems. Hey, sometimes, John, you and I, we're getting a little old. Sometimes the serial number sticker on the back of a piece of equipment is a little hard to read. You know what? The zoom function on your camera can do wonders.
It works, doesn't it?
And sometimes I try to get the camera really close to zoom up on something. No. That it doesn't focus that close necessarily. So get back to where it'll focus, and then use the zoom function on the camera. And I know you're zooming in digitally with most of these, but you can really get a clear picture of a serial number, or what kind of connector it is, or what is causing a problem maybe behind something. Hey, you get in a tube cavity and is it clean back behind there? You can take your camera and you can do a selfie, right? Or you can, however you need to do it, you can take a good picture of things that you can't normally see. And this is a huge benefit. Now, the tip I want to pass along, because I'm amazed at the people who don't really realize this, is that I hear people complain about, oh, my camera's full. My my storage is full. I need to offload these to my laptop so I can free up some more photo or video storage on my phone. You're doing it wrong. You're absolutely doing it wrong. You need to get your phone hooked up with, yes, one of the services, and they're typically free or close to free, but you can use Google Photos, and you can use Amazon Prime. If you're paying for Amazon Prime right now, you have available to you basically unlimited photo storage with Amazon Prime. And of course, if you have a Gmail account, you can get basically unlimited photos. But I know Google is going to start charging for the storage for those. I think it's worthwhile. I pay for the extra storage space anyway. And then there's other paid for, there's SmugMug, and there's some other things out there to store your photos. The point is this: as soon as I take a picture with this camera, within a few seconds or a minute or two, it's uploaded to the cloud. And the Google Photos app even reminds me from time to time, hey, Kirk, you've got 1,253 photos on your phone, and your storage on your phone is getting a little low. All of these are backed up to the cloud. Would you like to go ahead and delete the photos that are on your phone? And I usually, I don't know, I always trust them. So I go check. Yep, sure enough, they're in the cloud. And so then I can delete all the photos on the phone and open up gigabytes of space. And by the way, I think, you know what, I'm also I'm uploading them to iCloud as well. So iCloud, Google Photos, and Amazon Prime. I got 3 copies of my photos, and I can delete them all from my phone. The point there is, if you do this, and probably with the other services too, but I know with Google Photos, if you visit a transmitter site and you were there 6 years ago and you want to go see the photos you took 6 years ago, you can search Google Photos in so many ways. You can search it for tower, and it'll find towers. You can search it. Now, I know it doesn't know what a transmitter is. Okay, I get that. But you can search it for location. Hey, I was in Hernando, Mississippi. So you type in Hernando, Mississippi in the search field, and sure enough, you'll get your pictures from Hernando, Mississippi. Especially if you've put some things into an album, then you do get even better granularity that way. But if I want to look up my photos from American Samoa, I can find literally hundreds of photos that I've taken at transmitter sites, at studios, on the beach, at businesses, in the radio station in American Samoa. So I love the fact that you can automatically upload stuff and that you can search it later and usually find what you're looking for within a few seconds. So that is my big tip, John Bisset. Use the features available with your phone.
Absolutely. And I want you to tell everybody how many photos you said you've got. That just blew my mind.
Google tells me I have over 100,000 photos. So, yeah. Now,
That's
there's a lot of kids,
transmitter studio sites.
Well, there's kids and grandkids and birthday parties and mom and dad and all that kind of stuff, and goofy selfies and things like that. But there's plenty of valuable photos too. I've gone back and looked at how did I have that rack arranged. I got another tip for you, John. Sometimes we as engineers need to deal with somebody at the radio station, and that somebody we may need them to look at a piece of equipment. Hey, go reboot this computer, or tell me what it says on the front of this piece of equipment, right? Tell me if the light is lit up next to the Ethernet jack, and they're going, huh? And so, okay, well, let's get on a FaceTime. So I've used FaceTime quite a few times in order to, so I could see what they're looking at and direct them to the right place. I had a guy, I said, look, I need you to look at the front of the Telos HX6 hybrid so we can see if the phone lines are active on it. And he said, oh, I can't find an HX6. It's not here. So no, it's right below this server. It's right there. It's got a silver face. It's right there. He says, nope, not there. So, okay, get on FaceTime, up and down the rack. See, it's right there. Oh, that's the Telos HX6. Well, something came up recently. I had a guy I was dealing with, great guy, his name is Zach, and at the time, he didn't have an iPhone. That means he doesn't have FaceTime. FaceTime's real convenient, right? And so I thought, okay, how can I do a video chat with him? Because he was swapping out a hard drive in a computer for me, and I really wanted to see what he was doing. Not everybody, right? But most people are on Facebook. And if you got Facebook, you got Facebook Messenger. And Facebook Messenger has video chat also. So you can video chat with somebody using Facebook Messenger. And I realize there's other apps as well that you can do video chat with. One of them is WhatsApp. So I've got a friend, actually my daughter lives overseas, and they use WhatsApp. So we video chat on WhatsApp. So there's plenty of choices to use to video chat with somebody and get them to be your eyes and ears out in the field or in the studio building that you might be able to. And without this, I'm telling you, there's things we wouldn't have gotten fixed.
Kirk, it's really important to, when you take your camera with you, your cell phone camera, to document everything. If you show up at a site and it's been vandalized, those pictures or video will be useful for both the police as well as the insurance company. I've talked to a number of directors of engineering or regional engineers, and they have pictures in files for each one of the sites that they're responsible for. So if they get a call from an engineer in the middle of the night at a certain location, they can go back and pick up the pictures that you're talking about the what's in the equipment racks, and look and see what the problem is, and many times diagnose it over the telephone like that. So I really have to say that I think the cell phone camera has become the most useful. It's even supplanted the Simpson 260 as far as the most useful piece of equipment in broadcast engineering, because we can use it for everything. And your point about snooping around inside transmitters with it is well taken. I had a photo not too long ago in one of the Workbench columns where a fellow was having the transmitter dropping off, couldn't figure out why, and he decided to stick his hand down in with the transmitter off, his hand down in behind the power transformer, and here was the carcass of a snake. He had gotten across a couple of the wires in there and was causing havoc. So once all of that was pulled out, it cleaned up the problem, and he found the hole that the snake got into. But these cameras are just amazing for things that they can do for us.
John, you've got a couple other pictures to take a look at and talk to us about good site.
Yeah, let me see what we have coming up next.
I'll tell you what. Someone can throw something up, and we'll talk about it, because we got about
there you
4
go.
more
That
pictures,
would be good.
I think. Here, what's
There we
this?
go. Oh,
Curious.
this is really neat, Kirk. You've probably been to the dentist recently and had a filling replaced.
You know
The
what? Funny you
dentist,
should mention I was at my dentist yesterday and had a filling replaced. How did you
well,
know?
they're not using, well, because I sold him this. No, I'm just kidding. They are now using, instead of the amalgam metal fillings, they are using this plastic ultraviolet cured plastic type ceramic compound. And this is one that follows the dental industry. It's called Bondic, Bondic. And if you search it on the web, where it comes in real handy is on one end of this pen that you see here is the dispenser that dispenses this glue substance, if you want to call it that. It's not really glue. This end is a ultraviolet LED that you turn on, and this cures the liquid resin, if you will. So just like the dentist, when he filled your tooth, he held this ultraviolet light in there to cure the filling material. In this case, the cord for this gentleman's iPhone was broken, and so he squirted this compound around it and cured it with the light. And it's useful for insulating wires. If you've got a circuit trace on a board that burned up or something like that, and you've got to run new wires to get a board up and running in an emergency, the Bondic works really, really well. And it's about $10 for a kit. And the kit, as I say, has the reservoir of the liquid material in one end of the pen, and then this LED ultraviolet light in the other end. And you just hold the light near it and cure it. It seals it, hardens it, and it solves a lot of problems. So probably a good thing if you've got wires fraying on your adapters here for charging. Good way of doing it. It'll save you the money for having to go out and buy brand new ones.
I could start doing my own dental work too. Oh, maybe not. Maybe not.
And I'll tell you about this. I get a big kick out of this when I do presentations. There is it's an iPhone endoscopy probe that turns your iPhone into an endoscope. And it's about a 3-foot long cable with a camera and a light at the end. Now, I don't know that anybody has used it as an endoscope going down to see what's going on in your stomach, but I have seen it used inside a transmitter where you can't get behind it. You drop this camera on the umbilical and lets you see what's going on. So if you're looking for another, maybe you could do dental work and endoscopies as well.
We have a picture of a STL and an Osprey. What are we talking about with this picture?
This was really pretty interesting. Osprey, this took place up in Maryland, and Osprey are protected species. You can't do anything. If they happen to infest your tower, you're out of luck. You can't get rid of the nests. You can't kill the birds. And what was happening was the little dipole on this station's STL transmitter was serving as a perch for them to lay their fish on and eat the fish. So what was driving the engineer crazy, because he couldn't go up there and do anything to kill the birds or to keep them away, he ended up finding a device made by a company called BirdX, BIRD-X.com. And they are plastic spikes. You could put metal spikes up there, but the metal spikes would interfere with the signal. So that idea is out. These are sharp plastic spikes that can be affixed with a wire tie, a black one, of course. And you just lay those on there, and that kept the birds away, and the problem went away for them. But what was happening was with the mass of the bird, they're pretty good sized birds, them sitting right there in the middle of the dish, their STL was going, the station was going off the air, and while they ate their lunch. So, it's a kind of a crazy thing. But if you have bird problems, this is a humane way of making those problems go away. Good website to know about.
Just to let Suncast know, the last picture we have, we're going to save for our tip of the week, but we have picture number 4, Suncast. This is a product that John has found. What is this?
This is really interesting. This is from a company called Loxdo, LOXDO.com. And the wiring it's a wiring harness, an organization process where those little strips that are on the cable hook onto the cable, and they are self-adhesive. So you can go ahead and route the cables where they stick there, and they won't peel off later. It just makes for some really nice cable routing, especially in sales offices and places where the public is going to be going. They're going to be able to have the cables looking nice, so you don't have all of this snake of cables behind desks and things like that.
It looks like, for the benefit of the advertising picture there, that they actually contrasting color to the cable for to show that this is what's holding it. But I would choose the same color, right? If it's a white
absolutely
cable, I choose a white clip, and a black cable, I choose a black clip. But obviously,
you're absolutely right.
Go off. Yeah. Wow. John, we're going to run out of time, but I did mention something called Cidr Notation, and I'll just bring this up quickly. Because I ran into it yesterday. So yesterday I was installing some brand new software from our colleagues at the Telos Alliance, and it was my first actual software installation of a Docker container. And I've been talking about this for some time. I've watched other people do it. I've let other people do it. And yesterday I did it myself. I actually yesterday installed 6 audio consoles on a Dell server, on a 9-year-old Dell server. It's now got 6 audio consoles running on it. And just to see if it would work on something smaller, I took this old Dell desktop machine, just had a Core 2 Duo, just not a modern machine at all, and installed it on a Docker container engine on there, the Docker engine and the Docker image to go on there. And when I was doing that, I had to tell it a range of IP addresses to allocate to these Docker installations. And the way that this is done in the IT environment, in many times, is with something called Cidr Notation. I forget what Cidr stands for. I'm sure you guys can find that out, but it's CIDR. CIDR. And so if you want to specify, this is to specify the size of a subnet with a slash and a number. So you may have something like 10.216.0.0 slash some number. And the question is, what number? Well, this number defines the size of the subnet mask, and so then it basically tells you how big is this network? How many IP addresses are we talking about here? Are we talking about 256 IP addresses? That would be a /24, or are we talking about maybe just 8 IP addresses? And I think that may be a /29. The point is, if you're asked for a subnet range in Cidr Notation, you're not going to know this off the top of your head. Well, of course, there are websites that help you figure this out. And thank goodness, because otherwise I couldn't have answered the question properly when installing these Docker containers. And so I did a Google search. Oh gosh, how can I find Cidr Notation? And one such website is subnet-calculator.com. subnet-calculator.com. I don't know if Suncast has an opportunity to pop that up right quick. If he doesn't, that's okay. But their point is, just do a Google search for CIDR, Cidr Notation, and you'll find calculators. And you can specify, hey, I want this range of IP addresses, or I want to start with this IP address as my base, and I want 24 addresses, or 64 addresses, or 4 addresses, and it'll tell you the right notation to put on there. So that's my tip. Not that this should be a tip of the week, but there's help out there. Just Google for. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Thank you very much, Suncast. So that's your IP subnet calculator, and you can get that Cidr Notation right there. So you're going to need that from time to time. Way to do it. Let's see. How's our time doing? Oh, we need to take a quick break, John Bisset, and we're going to come back, John, with at least one tip from you. And also, I want. That's right, the tip of the week. And we also want to cover that Middle Atlantic rack shelf thing that you mentioned, because I think that's valuable too. So this is This Week in Radio Tech. John Bisset is my guest. I'm Kirk Harnack, live on location on a hilltop at the south side of Nashville, where there are a whole bunch of FM transmitters and TV transmitters and some cell towers here too. This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you in part by my friends at Angry Audio. And I got something here to show you. I brought it out here with me. This is a new product with the Studio Hub name on it. This is a Studio Hub branded product. See, it says right there, Studio Hub. And you may be thinking, well, look, it's a rack panel full of XLRs. It's got 8 female XLRs and 8 male XLRs. And on the back, this is where you connect your RJ45s or your D-Sub 25s. This is a breakout box. This is to break out from or to XLR connections like this, from or to the Cat5 cables, the RJ45s that are so commonly in use these days, especially with audio over IP systems. Now, in a lot of broadcast plants, you may not need this, but there are plenty of audio facilities that they want to deal with XLRs, right? And they want to deal with them in the front side of the rack. They may have patches to make, things to hook up. They may run something temporarily across the way. If you go to a lot of recording studios, they're going to want to have something like this, even if their back-end infrastructure is RJ45 connectors. Well, the point here is that Studio Hub makes these. And by the way, these will work for analog audio, mono or stereo, and they'll work for AES EBU audio, also known as AES3. The jacks in the back are set up for that as well. So you just use the correct jack, whether using stereo analog or AES EBU. There's another kind of jack on the back here. I know you can't probably see it very well, me holding this to the camera, but you can actually fit 4 AES EBU signals on one RJ45. That's 4 pairs. That's a standard called AES 72 Type 4E. So this has that standard built into it, and it has the AES 59 standard. Some people call this the Tascam pigtail, because Tascam made a lot of these, maybe even invented it. 25 pins here, coming out to RJ45s or XLRs on the other end. There's just all different things you can do with this. Now, you may not need this, and then again, you may. And if you do, Studio Hub is a place to get you hooked up with this. They have several varieties of this brand new product. They are developing new products at Studio Hub. When people call in different industries, say, hey, I need a solution for this or that, Studio Hub listens. And so check them out. Studio Hub is now part of Angry Audio. You can find out all about this at the website angryaudio.com. angryaudio.com. Find out about that product and so many more at Angry Audio. Hey, we're going to hear real quick from Gary Morrill about Max Connect Wireless. We'll be right back.
I'm Gary Morrill, Midwest Regional Director of Engineering for Alpha Media. When I first spoke with Josh Bone about Max Connect, he told me they'd work great for remote transmitter sites where connectivity was a challenge. And he's absolutely right. We even have sites where we're using this as a backup to our STL using Max Connect's dual carrier option, and it works perfectly. We also have times where we need to be able to get out to a venue where it's kind of challenging because everybody and his brother is trying to stream video at the same time, like at a big sporting event. And you know what? Our data gets through every time because it's prioritized packet data. It works for us. It'll work for you. Max Connect. Check it out.
And that's what I'm using today out here in not exactly the middle of nowhere, but I am on a hill and there's no internet drop near me, at least not that I have access to. So we're actually streaming to you live through this Max Connect 4G LTE modem. This particular modem is made by PepWave. The modem itself doesn't really matter that much. What matters is the SIM card that goes inside. And talk to Josh Bone or anybody at Max Connect Wireless. They are growing. They're growing so big they've actually kind of made it a separate division now. It doesn't matter to you. You still get the same service. Connect with them at maxconnectwireless.com. You can see there's the website, but I'll link it in the show notes. And you can use any carrier that you want, any of the major carriers they have agreements with for prioritized data and you get a fixed IP address. You can put that box at a transmitter site and know that you can connect to it because it has a fixed public IP address. Really cool. Thanks a lot, Josh Bone, Max Connect Wireless, for this week, sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. Stuff works. All right, John, what is your last tip? And I think we have a photograph about that. Photograph number 5, Suncast.
We do. This is going to make you sick.
Oh,
hey, it's hunting season, folks. And what this tip is that you need to have a backup system. This is a piece of coax that was used as a target by a hunter and took the station off the air. The problem was they did not have a way of getting their exciter plumbed into an auxiliary antenna. And the issue then is that you're off the air for an extended period of time. So my tip here is that if you don't have a pigtail of, 25 feet of coax, half-inch coax, going to a reducing cone that you can plug into your coaxial transfer switch or into the coax coming off the transmitter itself, it's a couple $100 investment that hopefully you'll never have to use, but especially for clusters of stations, more than likely you're going to need it at some point.
Gotcha. Cool. Yeah. In fact, at my transmitter sites, we have over the years collected some various adapters, from engine 5/8 to an N connector, engine 5/8 to 7/8, and those have really proven their worth. I wish we could afford, coaxial switches or coaxial patch bays, and at small stations often you can't. Yes, it's going to require a visit by an engineer to, do some plumbing and use some wrenches and move things around. But if your backup transmitter, if you can hook into that, use some half-inch coax or 7/8 coax and get back on the air. Boy, those adapters are very valuable. You're right.
And Kirk, I think
right.
the surprise here is just how far an exciter will get you. We're normally looking at 10 or 20 kilowatts of power. Well, a 30 watt or 50 watt exciter can really provide you with a tremendous coverage. I mean, a lot more than you would think. So if it's a choice between being on the air or off the air, it's money well spent.
Hey, that first watt is the most valuable one. So yeah. We've operated when we had to with a backup exciter, and we've got exciters that put out 300 watts, and I think we got an amplifier put out 1,000 watts. So yeah, it's good to have that kind of thing handy. One more quick tip that you've got for us, and that's about Middle Atlantic rack shelves, because hey, we all deal with servers from time to time, and those server rack rails, number one, are expensive, and number two, sometimes you buy brand new rack rails or some used rack rails and you find out, these don't fit in a broadcast equipment rack. They're meant for a server farm rack, which oftentimes has this, they're quick and cool to use, but if you don't have the right rack rails, they don't do any good at all if they got these square thingies that pop in anyway. What's your idea about Middle Atlantic rack shelves?
Well, this was a neat idea, Kirk. It was taking a rack shelf and inverting it and screwing it into the rack where you want the server to go. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a permanent installation, but it can be. But the point being that if you're by yourself trying to juggle, a 30 or 40 pound a piece of equipment like a server and get it screwed in without cross-threading the screws, the rack works out really well. So you lay the shelf in, you lay the server on top of the rack, screw the thing in, and then you can go ahead and pull the rack shelf out if you like. But it was a neat idea, something very quick and dirty, but it gets solves the problem. So keep that in mind as you're changing computers out.
Yep. And I've got several servers that are sitting on Middle Atlantic rack shelves where, for one reason or another, the rack rails just weren't going to work out right. So good idea. John, we are out of time. Thank you for another. I mean, this is like reading, 6 months of your articles in one.
We've had a good time. This has really been great.
Condensed into one show. And do look out, folks, for the ebook from Radio World, right? About best transmitter maintenance practices.
Coming out in about 2 weeks. So you should, if you're subscribing to Radio World, you'll get an email about it. And if not, go on to the Radio World site and search for ebooks, and you'll be able to download it there.
Sounds good. Hey, coming up, John, I appreciate you being with us. Next week, John, we're going to have a friend that you and I both know, Chris Alexander from Crawford Broadcasting is going to be our guest. He's going to be talking about radio engineering now and in the future. Because like every other broadcaster, Crawford Broadcasting is having to look at the future and see what they need to be doing to serve audiences, continue to make money, advertising, donations, whatever it is. And Chris Alexander's been at the forefront of that. So that's next week. John Bisset, thank you very much for being with us. I appreciate you.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me, Kirk. This was a good time.
And be sure you catch John Bisset's columns in Radio World, his Workbench columns. All right, we got to go. Thanks a lot to Suncast. You've been doing a great job, Suncast. Thanks for helping us out, even on remote and with all the pictures and everything. And thanks also to Andrew Zarian, the founder of the GFQ Network, home of lots of your favorite podcasts. If you don't know your favorite yet, you ought to check them out because they do some cool things. All right, we got to run. We'll see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech.